Hello, this is KC. Thanks so much for following my channel and my build on my Expedition camper. We're going to take a little time out from that today because I have a very special interview with Monika and Gary Wescott of the Turtle Expedition, who have been traveling the globe for 45 years in multiple different vehicles. And they're going to share many traveling tips, stories, and also some real great nuggets of wisdom that'll help you during your travels or even just help you to get out and travel. I was so fortunate to be able to camp right next to them at the very first Overland Expo in Redmond, Oregon. This is their truck here, Turtle number 5. And it's been a pleasure to spend time with them, and both at the Overland Expo and also since then as well. So do go ahead and enjoy this interview with them and learn from their 45 years of travel together. And pardon for all the background noise. We did have a lot of background noise.
It's been really a pleasure, right, and a blessing to be able to camp with you two. You know, Gary and Monika of the Turtle Expedition. It's just so nice to meet you both in person. I followed you both for probably over 2 decades. You know, more than 2 decades.
Make me feel old.
And it's
only like 2 weeks ago that you contacted us for the first time.
For the first time, that's true. I know, it's kind of embarrassing, right? I know, right? I always saw, like, one of these days when I'm traveling through Nevada City, like, I'll reach out, and it just never quite worked out timing-wise.
Well, next time you better do.
I will, absolutely. I'm going to make sure I do, right?
When I'm scanning through my email, and I always go to the trash first to make sure I've thrown everything out, and then I go to my junk. And when I see new contact, and that's what it comes in with somebody like you right there, then I always stop and read it, save it, because those are the people that have really been following us that kept us on the road for the last 45 years. Without people like you.
So that's awesome. I mean, you guys have been on the road for 45 to 50 years.
Off and on.
Off and on. Yeah. Right? With some pretty amazing
events. More on than off.
And more on than off, right? Yeah. I mean, some of your journeys and adventures have gone on for 200 days long or so?
3 years.
3 years?
3 years long, okay.
3 years.
So if we just take a step back in time, like, Gary, you started really at a very young age, you know, with Land Rovers, right? Land Rover 109s, you know, traveling.
109, that was my first overland vehicle. I didn't know what the word overland meant. To me, a Land Rover said adventure. There's a tire on the hood, and you see 2 of them, something's happening somewhere. But 2 of them, it just looked like something out of Africa.
And that excited you, right? The idea of an adventure?
Well, what excited me is I was sitting in a pudding shop in Istanbul, Turkey, and I was really tired of traveling with public transportation, hitchhiking, trains, buses, trains. And one of the things I realized I was in love with travel by then. I got the bug. A Land Rover pulled in across the street, a Dormobile, and a young couple got out, popped the top up. And I said, when I'm sitting there having my Turkish coffee, I kind of stick a spoon in and it stands up.
Right.
I said, that's the way to travel. And I just that image started for me what I now know is the secret. Didn't know what it was back then. I'd used it several times in my life before then. So I got my first car, but that Land Rover started that little bug in the secret. And I don't know how many months later, but I was walking down the street in San Francisco, a used car lot, Land Rover dealer. They still sold Land Rovers. That was when they stopped, but there was a 1969 Land Rover sitting in the shop room, and I came in and asked, what do you want for it? I don't know what it was, but it was good. I got it.
What was it that screamed adventure, right, and excitement within the way to travel, right? What was that made it the secret travel via this, you know, Land Rover 109 at that time?
I guess I had no fear of travel because, I mean, San Diego State was my 13th school. You know, my mother was a vagabond of sorts. She was in Mexico with my stepfather and retired down there, and I just, you know, I didn't have any fear of travel. So that in combination with not having really any direction, because I was going to be a veterinarian. I was studying medicine, and I worked at a kennel, and I had a border collie for 16 years, and all dogs weren't even close to being a border collie. And I thought, if I'm going to spend the next 8 years going to school to take care of Weimaraners and poodles and Cocker Spaniels that people can't take care of anyway. And then what really kicked it off too was the next door there was a veterinarian, and I got to meet him and talk to him, you know. And he had been going to school for 8 years, and had a business, and there he was, and he was driving an old Chevrolet station wagon. And I go, wait a minute, that doesn't spell success to me. And so the whole thing of being a veterinarian, and I'd been a school photographer, an editor of the newspaper. A knack that I didn't appreciate maybe for writing, and so I just switched to journalism. And I got in the darkroom and started taking pictures and working for the school newspaper, and it went on from there.
And so what made you take this initial idea of traveling to remote places and long distances via vehicle, right, back in the 1970s?
I never really thought of doing it with a vehicle. I met a girl I was dating, and she had been to France on an exchange student. And she had some slides she sent me. She brought back, and I watched the slides, and I got the bug again. And the people walking around the streets, and but I never really thought of having a vehicle. I just thought, yep, okay, I'll put a backpack on, and I did. I put that backpack on, flew to Amsterdam, hitchhiked across Europe, took trains to Iran and Afghanistan. That was the bug in it, but it wasn't really. It was on the way back from my backpacking trip that I realized that I didn't want to take public transportation anymore. And that's when the Land Rover. I saw the Land Rover in Istanbul at the coffee shop, at the pudding shop. And that's where the bug really started to catch up. So buying the Land Rover meant it had to go someplace. Because Land Rovers looked like they had to go someplace. So that was started it. So then I spent the next 2 years working 3 jobs, paying off my bills, and building the Land Rover to go to South America, and that was the laser point. Going to South America, nothing. Joy could have died. My mother could have died. The house could have burned down. I didn't have a house, but there was some point that I realized that the only way I was going to get to South America is to laser point it, and that was really kind of a mentality that I developed over a lot of things that I had to do in life, laser.
Yeah. And Monica, we were talking the other night, and it's a really great conversation we had the other night. And, you were saying, like, Gary had this laser focus, right, when you first met him down there in Mexico. You first met him down there, and he was like, I'm going to South America.
That's right.
And so more or less, like, how did that, like, interaction, like, first start for you? What excited you to, like, okay, jump in a Land Rover 109 with almost a complete stranger at that point in time, like drive with this guy who has a laser focus. I know, right? And here we are, 50 years later or so, right? So obviously it's worked out. But yeah, what kind of made you like step into that vehicle with this guy to go to South America?
My kitchen.
I think I was born a gypsy. Big Swiss, big born in Morocco. My mother gave me a letter that my dad wrote when I was 2 years old. He wrote me this letter and he called me Gypsy. Which I found years later, that's really funny. But being European, we traveled with our parents, with friends, across the borders in 15 minutes. We were in Germany, so the fear of not speaking a language or experiencing different cultures was just never there for me.
Yeah.
And so after I was teaching in Minneapolis for a year, I was just not ready to go home yet. And so when I met Gary here, I was at a crossroad, either go back home to Switzerland and start teaching again or have an adventure. And that sounded more interesting. So we didn't know each other, but we had an agreement. We'll travel together for 3 months and see what happens. And he promised me South America, but after 2.5 months, when he asked me, are you going to stay? I said, well, we haven't been in South America yet. And it took 9 years for us to get there.
So this first journey, right, this very first journey, it took you 9 years to basically go from Mexico down through South America.
We actually decided we needed to ship, otherwise we'll never get there.
Around the gap?
Ship. Skip Central America and ship from New Orleans to Cartagena.
And Cartagena, Colombia, and that was because you're having so much fun, or really seeing and exploring, really in between Mexico and Central America.
No, we just knew if we keep, because when you are in Mexico, every 6 months you have to leave the country to get a new visa. But we just never seemed to be able to go further.
You can never get further to
we were
the southern border.
in Guatemala and we were in Belize, but we never got further. So we never got to Panama where we could have shipped.
Okay.
So we decided it's better for us to just ship from the States, and then we are there. And once you are in South America, then you can't make a U-turn to go back to the States.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what happened with us.
So this first trip really was a 9-year journey.
Yes.
When I started writing for Off-Road Magazine, which was by chance, because I just wrote one article, we met the article of the editor before we left the United States the first time.
Yeah.
He basically wrote me an aerogram and said, when's the next one coming? So I started writing for Off-Road Magazine, and he gave me that little pittance of income that I needed to continue to do what Monica and I were doing. We were just having a great time. We were on what most people think they do for their vacation. Driving down the coast of Baja, driving down the coast of the Pacific, maybe 50 miles, and seeing another beach, Looks nice. Let's stop there for the night. Oh, this is great. We can go fishing. Let's stop for a week.
Well, Mexico has many different Indian cultures,
Yeah.
not just one.
Yeah.
So it was really, I mean, that was the most fascinating for me, is learn about the different cultures and the different foods, and learning Spanish from him. And I always call Spanish is my fifth language, and I never learned it in school. But I call it market Spanish because that's where I learned it, with the people in the market and the fishermen. Those were my first words. So all of that had a lot of excitement. But doing the stories, as Gary said, he helped us move from one place to the next, and oftentimes we had to wait for the check to go move on to the next place.
Yeah, but we were camped on the beach, and an idyllic beach, as you know, where I could go out and mask and snorkel and spear fish in 20 minutes. We were spending $25 a week, and that was for everything. We didn't have insurance, didn't believe in it. We had to buy propane every 3 or 4 months. Fuel, I think it was like 34 cents a gallon back then. That was no big deal. Food, you go in with an ice chest, fill up the ice chest with rice, and then you go for the food.
Yeah.
We had to go once a week for vegetables. And we'd lay in our hammock, get up in the morning, have a cup of coffee, eat some papaya, watch the birds, maybe go for a walk on the beach, go for a swim. That was life. $25 a week. Why leave that? You know, I was doing what I imagined I wanted to do when I was living in South Lake Tahoe, working 3 jobs. So there was no reason to leave, and it was perpetuating itself because every couple of months I'd get a check from the magazine for $500. That was low.
For an article that you wrote for them.
Yeah. And there was endless articles. You know, the people started following us. They didn't care where we went. They just wanted to know where we were going to go next.
Yeah.
And that was the part of that. And we could go canoeing in the Boundary Waters. We could hike Mount Whitney, the John Muir Trail.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. They were living our dream,
Right.
which was a dream. It's life, you know.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you've had a dream life, so let's just segue a little bit to that. What's been some of the highlights, right, of this life? How about for you, Monica? Can you think of some of the great highlights?
Well, I have to tell you that the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. It was not all sweet and cookie, but
I've been climbing a fence all my life. There, it is greener.
That's right. Okay, so let's talk about some of those hardships, some of the challenges. And it sounds like a pretty dreamy life, traveling around and seeing all these different cultures and places and learning new languages and meeting wonderful people. But there's obviously a lot of challenges, right?
Yeah, well, one of them is I could never call my sister and say, hey, come on over for a cup of coffee. I mean, the relationships were far removed. I mean, at that time, it took 3 months for me to get a letter from my parents.
Right.
And so the communication was a big thing, but it's not like it was internet. Even making a phone call was a procedure. You had to go to a telephone station. It used to be called PTT, Postal Telephone and Telegraph, which nobody knows what telegraphs are anymore. And we had to order a phone call. We had to wait in a waiting hall. Then you were called. You got to go to a booth and hope that whoever was on the other end was home. And that could take an hour. Life was just kind of slower. The other thing is, we had to deal with weather, and sometimes we were just in this little tiny Land Rover, and it kept raining for days at a time, when there were mosquitoes and museums, and then humidity, and we had to develop film at 4 in the morning because it was too hot otherwise. So there were a lot of challenges, but that was all part of life.
Yeah.
It's the community. It's the other fellow travelers that we met, especially in Mexico, and learning about the people that's sort of kept my interest up.
Yeah. How about for you, Gary? What were some of those bigger challenges?
I don't really remember anything terrible. It was just like, the rain sometimes
That goes away.
We put the awning out. I could still cook on my kitchen outside the Land Rover, the Land Rover days. The things that Monica had to consider, and I call them obstacles and responsibilities. I didn't have to call my sister. I didn't have a house. I didn't have a job I had to go back to. I didn't have a dog that I had to take care of. When I left South Lake Tahoe, unique as it may seem, odd, I didn't have to come back. Ever. And I had been going to meet the watering holes and meat holes, somebody to travel with, like Monica. And I kept running into people that, wow, that really sounds fun, but I have a job I have to get back to. I can only get a couple of weeks off, and I've got an apartment I'm renting. And, I have a dog, and by the way, I have a couple of kids. My previous marriage, Monica was in that unique situation, and maybe we're lucky we all have it one time in our life. She had responsibility, which is very important for overland travel. You've got to be responsible. I met girls who go, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Yeah, when are you leaving?
Right.
No, great. She had responsibilities. But the cool thing was, she didn't have a job. She didn't have any of those things that most people have, like a house. And, she didn't have any responsibilities. And that's what keeps you stuck in this society, responsibilities. And I got rid of them all. I paid off all my bills. I put all my stuff in storage in a friend's house, got in my Land Rover and drove south.
Yeah.
And obviously, I mean, I came into your life, so I had to learn to adapt to what your thing was all
Well,
about.
you couldn't break into my laser, no.
Yeah.
No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about just the Land Rover. I mean,
Yeah.
I stepped into your life, and I took a while to sort of work things out, and even with organizations. And I'm a good organizer, so. And I was taking over responsibilities that Gary didn't really like to do, like balancing the checkbook. And so I wanted him to be able to have time to write, and I sort of took care of a lot of the other things. So as a team, we started working things out of where we were standing.
You started to assume these responsibilities and things. And obviously, you're very meticulous, right? You keep things clean and organized.
I'm very Capricorn. That was one of the things that caused me to break up with Joy. She would put a coffee cup on the shelf like that. Okay? And I would walk in, look at it, turn around, put it like that. And that's a mentality. It's anal. I'll walk through the house and see a picture of the crook and I'll reach up. And she does the same thing. So there's, I'll see something that's, not, okay, we're good now.
Yep.
And it's a disease.
Yeah.
But it's what made me able to travel. Organization. I had a sign on the trailer we were traveling in. The secret to making a big space smaller is organization.
Yeah.
And I think that in being Swiss, and my father was an engineer, I sort of had that logic mind. I realized immediately that if you take the scissors out of the stationery box, it needs to go back in there. It can't go somewhere else because, number one, you have to look for it, which is my pet peeve. I hate looking for things. And also it takes a space off something else.
I can answer that.
There goes Michael. Say goodbye in a loud way. In the Michael way. Yeah, so you're very organized, and so that really worked out with also Gary's organization, that you could fit into his way of organization pretty easily.
In a small place like that, you had to both be on the same plane.
Yeah, and keeping things clean and organized up. And so, but you were stepping into really his journey, his laser focus. And so that must have had some challenges, I'm sure, too. Like obviously a lot of adjustments for you.
Partially because I've never lived with anybody. For me, it was that 24 hours a day with somebody. But, I went for walks, and sometimes we were disagreeing. And, that's just part of life. I mean, you can't just walk out because you have a great disagreement with somebody.
When you're on this trip together and stuck in a vehicle together, essentially on this trip, right, you're really relying on each other.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Entirely.
And she had the confidence. She just decided to leave. I could drop her off at the bus station. She'd find her way home.
Right.
And what has been really, you were asking those questions too. And for years and years and years, people always ask, how do you manage to stay on the road financially? How do you make a living? I know this Overland Expo, people kept asking, how did you survive this relationship? How do you survive being together 24 hours a day? And it never really, Scott Brady at the TV interview was the first one. It sort of threw me in a loop. And you asked the same question. And Gary and I, as we talked about, we were not really infatuated with each other. We respected each other in the beginning, and we started a friendship. And I think it's the friendship that kept us together, because that's kind of the underlying line, the respect and the friendship. And romance comes and goes. It's kind of a science way. It goes sometimes, you have a great time together and everything is rosy, and other times it's just you don't talk with each other for half a day or whatever. Then it sort of goes away again because you have to continue living together. Yeah. Sometimes we don't talk to anybody for a month or more who speaks the same language. You go shopping and you use your broken whatever language it is, but to actually have a real conversation can take months.
So what are those gems to, like, you know, keep that relationship healthy and you know, right?
Here come the new bombarding questions. Your turn.
Well, you know, when Scott was asking these questions, I think it starts, obviously, I think first of all it starts with physical attraction. For various different reasons, their body or their smile or their boobs or whatever. That's where it starts. Then that becomes infatuation. You think you're in love. You're not. Then it becomes, after infatuation, you put them on a pedestal. Oh boy, okay. They eventually fall off. They find out they couldn't ski there as well as they could. They said they could. They said they loved tennis, but they couldn't even hold the racket right. Or they said they were great cooks, but they couldn't even boil water. Then they fall off the pedestal. Then you decide to pick up the pieces and see, well, I'm still infatuated. Maybe we can make this work afterwards. And then slowly, as you learn to know the values and the qualities of the other person, respect comes in. It's not love anymore yet. It's not infatuation anymore. But then I think that slowly grows into respect, and out of that comes love. And that love is much deeper than just respect or infatuation.
And so it's that respect that you have for each other, that you want to make sure you're treating each other kindly and with that respect and respecting each other and what each other wants and how you do things, so you can work together.
Yeah. And we know for sure now, after how many years?
45.
What? You're not perfect. And I'm not either. Get over it. You're not going to teach me how to, after 77 years of learning how to walk, I am not going to walk different. Stop telling me how to walk.
You've been doing this, you know, this adventuring, right? Adventure travel for so long and writing stories and everything else. Like, what is anything different, right? You know, speaking of difference, right? Anything different maybe coming up in your future? Anything different you guys have planned, or you plan to kind of keep doing a lot of the same thing that you've been doing, a lot of these adventures and travels and writing about it, sharing about it?
I think I'm slowly realizing that despite my attitude and my feeling about it, the fact, I am actually getting a little older at 77. And there probably will be a time, sometime in the future, I don't know when it is, but there might be a time that I can't drive a 14,000-pound expedition truck around the world on bad roads. I'll probably still be going to Mexico for a month. That's a short trip. But I won't be able to take these giant expeditions, which is going to be probably the one to South America, maybe the last one with the big truck. We may go to Africa and rent a Land Rover with a rooftop tent with both cabins, campers. Really, that would not be a big challenge to live in a rooftop tent and do that type of travel. It would be actually fun. We had a rooftop tent and put it on our BMW. We loved it. Great.
Yeah, because it was like a smaller, nimble car, so
we can go anywhere.
Well, we love the treehouse.
We're professional car campers, so we have a table, a stove, an ice chest, chairs. We did this when we bought the car. We did that in Switzerland. We outfitted ourselves out of the hardware store. We'd be camped on the side of the road in an idyllic spot in Switzerland with a meadow in the background and cows with bells on their neck, and be sitting there drinking a glass of wine and having a piece of bread, some salami for lunch. And people would drive by and they knew what we were doing. They'd honk their horn and go, yeah. We knew we were doing the right thing at that time, at that moment.
You're living life, right? Something we all want to be doing, right? You're living life and enjoying the moment.
Yeah,
right? You're very much in the moment.
And because we're so adaptable, I think that's really an important factor. We could stop at a campground, set up our tent, cook dinner, or maybe not, and then go out to a restaurant, have a nice meal, and come back, get back into the tent, get up in the morning, make coffee, pack the car up, and drive away. That ability to switch from costumes, life is you're just an actor, If you want to go swimming in a pool in Acapulco, just put a bathing suit on, go down and sit in a lounge chair and order a drink. Suddenly you are no longer a tourist traveling around with a Land Rover. You are a guest. Can I get you another beer, sir?
Right. Some of the challenges, like along the way, like things to get over it.
There was never anything really drastic, Break an axle on the Land Rover, carry a spare.
Yeah.
Get out and fix it.
Right.
And take off drain the oil out to save it, and take off the cover plate, and fish out the broken piece that was inside. Stick a new axle in, bolt it back on.
Yeah.
The Land Rover was so simple. I had the whole Land Rover, 2 fuses, probably had 70 fuses in this car.
Yeah.
This truck right here.
Yeah.
It was a pretty simple vehicle
Yeah.
to work on and to drive. Didn't have any air conditioning. Didn't have any even defrosters. It had 2 vents on the front where you could lift it up if you wanted air coming out.
Right.
Windows didn't roll down with a button. They slid.
Yep. Yep.
It was just a basic, so simple vehicle to drive. That's what made it such an enjoyable vehicle to travel in. It didn't have all the we have now.
And at the same time, you built out the Turtle, now Turtle number 5.
Yeah.
All of Turtles have been, pretty amazing, right? And even those Land Rovers pretty amazing. They all kind of build upon the last one, and each time you add a little more, I wouldn't necessarily call it creature comforts as part of it, right, to make the travels comfortable, but it's also more to help you sustain those travels, right, for longer periods.
Well, the whole thing evolved. Technology changed.
Yeah.
But what I want to say about Gary is that I think human nature is to forget the bad stuff. We cannot dwell on the bad stuff, so that sort of goes in the background. Whatever happened, the things that you don't want to remember, they go away.
Right.
So I think that's why so many people think their youth was rosy, because it always had snow. It snowed every year.
Yeah.
There lots of snow every year, which is not true, but that we remember the times that had snow.
Yeah.
So it's a good thing.
That's right.
And I cannot think of a terrible situation right now that we had anywhere. Police, Guatemala,
What is bad situation of what?
in life on the road. I can't think of anything. We had amazing times, and we had maybe some. I can't even think of a particularly difficult time. It's gone.
Then there was, we got really frustrated when your cousin didn't send the mail to police for 3 weeks.
Oh,
So we
okay,
had,
yeah.
and stuff like that.
Yeah. You're waiting for mail to arrive, and so
Or it
it
never
was
showed
stalling
up.
out your time to travel, your
Yeah.
journey. Yeah.
And we were ready to leave because it
Those
was
were
really hot.
not catastrophic.
No,
Yeah,
nothing was
The
catastrophic.
engine didn't blow up. The transmission didn't fail.
No.
Yeah. So you had some simple mechanical failures and things like that.
Yeah, very simple. When the clutch cylinder in the Land Rover, we were in Hotspot, and there were no parts, but I knew there was a Land Rover parts dealership in Mexico City. So I left the truck, got on a train with a friend, went to Mexico City, got the parts house, bought the part, came back, put it in. Went to Canada. I didn't have to hire a mechanic.
Yeah.
So, that was together. I don't remember if it was totally absolutely catastrophic.
No, we never had a catastrophe.
Yeah.
Granted, unless you want to call the Tahoe when we had when it was icy and you slid into another car. I mean, we did have, that's the only accident we really had.
Only accident you ever had. That was actually in a local to your home.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
No, we didn't have a house then.
Okay.
We didn't buy our house until 1991.
Yeah.
I told Gary I wanted a house by the time I was 40.
Did it happen? Yeah.
And that whole concept of not having any responsibilities, now suddenly we started to suck ourselves back into. We bought furniture on time because we could take the money and invest it. And we moved back into a house, and now we're part of society again. We're not driving around it. We're part of it. And that was a little bit weird because we're slowly working our way around back into that feeling of being able to leave indefinitely. We can always rent a house or hire somebody to take care of it. We can rent it, we can hire a gardener. That's all part of that organization to give you that freedom of not having to come back in 2 months.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing about being on the road for unlimited time, and you drag your foot or your toe, within minutes you're back in society.
Oh yeah,
You can just, it.
Mm.
Well, how would you explain it?
the society wants you back. They will do anything to get you back into the system. Like you say, drag your toe, get a credit card, buy 3 things on a credit card. Now you have credit. You can buy something else on credit. Now you have payment. Now you have to get a job to make those payments. Much more than you had before. You didn't have them. And, let's get some new furniture. They give you 40% discount. No payments for 6 months. Okay, let's buy furniture.
Mm-hmm.
You're back in now. You're in there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's really easy.
And once you're in it, it's very difficult to get out. You have to just stop, like I did, get 2 jobs, pay everything off, and drive away.
Mm-hmm.
And people seem to be doing that. They're selling their house, I recommend to rent a house because you don't know are you really going to like it. Rent the house for a year and see how it goes.
Yeah. You talked a lot about, like, it was so easy for Monika, for you to really, get into a vehicle, this idea of traveling through South America and be somewhat of a gypsy, enjoy this traveling life, and Gary, for you to be laser focused on what you wanted to achieve. Can you give some maybe like words of advice or ideas on like enabling, helping others if they want to travel, they want to go and explore, but they're maybe a little afraid of making that change, right? That transition from the life that, we all get ourselves sucked into, or those fears of travel, because everyone always talks about fears of travel. And, I've been through about 35 or 40 countries. I've never had anything bad happen.
Yeah.
You've been through 78 or so countries
Something like that,
now,
yeah.
and have never had anything bad happen, right? You've met a lot of generosity and wonderful experiences along the way.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so what are some like maybe ideas or thoughts, maybe inspire or help others with their travels?
Well, when you start out, it's totally a learning thing, Like I think our first long camp, when I was traveling with Joy before me and Monica, was at San Carlos, by Algodones, where they filmed Catch 22. We found a beautiful little, kind of like a little cup between the sand dunes on the south side of that beautiful bay with the beautiful mountains and everything. And fishing was great, but we camped in the sand. We found out very quickly that when you camp in the sand, that we were living in the Land Rovers, but everything got sandy. And so I never camped in the sand after that. It was a very beautiful camp, but everything had sand in it. You step in it, your feet are full of sand, your toes are full of sand. You got food in your bed, you got food on the floor, you can't get rid of it. But you can't near the sand, that's nice, but don't camp in the sand. And also it was really, really hot during the day because the sand is white, it's just reflecting. And I remember I was down there even before that with some friends, and we were walking on the beach, and it was a parabolic mirror. The white sand being behind, the water here, we got so fried, we had to put a stick on the gas pedal and drop it against the seat to put it in our leg. And to walk, we had to pull our pants up and did. You learn about these things by making a mistake. Mistakes teach you a lot of things.
Sometimes you just got to get there and do it, right? And learn from doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
I think it's more general. He's asking. So, if you travel with a vehicle, make sure everything is secure. Lock it up with padlocks, pop rivet stuff on. So that's one thing that you can eliminate the worry by having your vehicle secure, which gives you your home. As for travel, you just have to start trusting yourself. You have to become aware of your surroundings. You have to kind of develop a seventh sense of, if you feel danger, you act on it, you move away, you go to a different spot. And it's all a learning process. Brains are not trained for that. We all have it, but our brains are not trained for it. As for dealing with people, relatives who say, you're crazy, well, if it's your dream to go, follow your dream.
Yeah.
See what happens. I mean, Gary didn't really know he's going to start writing for a magazine. He just saved up money enough that he thought he could travel for 5 years and just went for it. I mean, we've seen it all over this expo here. People who they built their vehicle, they're ready to go. Even you put on a backpack and go to Thailand for a month. Buy yourself a ticket and have so much cash, and if your cash runs out, you either come back or you find a job to continue your traveling.
Yeah, there's jobs everywhere. You don't have to have a college. That's what I realized. To do what I wanted to do, I did not have to have a piece of paper from the university.
It helps.
I knew what I wanted to do. Maybe it helps if I wanted to get a job afterwards, but I didn't. And that's what started me traveling. I had no specific direction employment-wise. I just knew that I had enough money and I could travel for a couple of years, at least.
You had to focus what you want to do. You had a plan to do it. You knew how much it cost roughly, and how to go about doing it, where you want to go.
I don't think you knew how much it would cost.
I had the confidence that if I ran out of money, I could get a job.
Right. And they said, and you had the initiative also to find work along the way, writing as an example. Right.
Yeah, there are lots of things you can do. Many organizations, for example, in New Zealand, you go hiking, you can work your way from farm to farm. You either get paid to stay there, or you work for your money. You work for your food, and then you move on to the next place. I mean, that's one way of moving on. And I think that these farming programs are all over the States. We have a friend of our chiropractor. I mean, he had kids work on his farm from all over the world. So it just depends how badly you want it. Leaving your surroundings is always hard.
That's right.
Learning, doing something new is hard, but that's part of how you grow, how you expand your horizon. And so I think it's especially important for Americans to have that experience. Well, Gary always said, had he had a kid, he would have said, okay, after high school, after college, he'd say, okay, where do you want to go?
Before college.
Huh? Before college,
Yeah.
okay, high school. Where do you want to go?
Pick a country.
And
Here's a round trip ticket. Here's $1,000. When you run out, get a job, and call me.
Yeah.
I'll get you back. But
Right.
go do that. Go find out who you are.
Yeah.
You're not going to find out here with all your friends here. Go
Right.
up there and sit in Dam Square in Amsterdam where all the travelers meet.
Yeah.
And find out who you are.
Yeah, you really have to get out of your comfort zone, right? And
Yeah.
enter new,
you
new
have to
zones.
push yourself out. It's
Yeah.
easy to
Yeah.
stay in there, but you have to push yourself. And I think it would be much better for the world understanding each other if we do all that. We
Yeah.
all do that. You have another perspective.
Right. When we find out we travel, we're all pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Right? We all just want to live a happy life.
Yeah, and 98% of people are good
That is
people.
something that we learned when we were planning our trip across Siberia. We are all the same.
Yeah.
That was something we were worried about. We heard all the fears about the bandits and there was no food. We knew that. There was no fuel some places. We knew that. There was no road. We knew that for sure. There was going to be winter time. There could be temperatures down to minus 70 degrees. All those things were reasons why we shouldn't try and drive across Siberia alone.
Right.
We went to the consulate in San Francisco. He said, no. There was wild animals. Take a gun. You have to have a guide. No, he's never been to Siberia. 13 times of the way. So we had been on Camel Club with Russia, and one of the Camel Club contestants, Mark Badowski, lived in Moscow. And so we went to visit him, and we were doing another video, a slideshow for a church in their orphanages, and ended up in Moscow with Mark. And we went to his father-in-law's dacha. All Russians have dachas.
Right.
Yeah, and we had a nice barbecue. And we came back to his apartment, sat around and talked about all these things that were reasons we shouldn't drive across Siberia alone, or all of Russia. And we had our typical 3 shots of vodka. Okay, that's Russian. And his father-in-law looked at me suddenly. He said, feel your pulse. Monica did. I did. And then he said, feel your pulse. So he did. And then he put his hand here and he said, our hearts beat the same.
So, Gary, you're saying something really poignant there about the Bible and what you fear will seek you. Or
When you're really worrying about something, you're just drawing it towards you. It's the same as believing it's going to happen. That's the other direction. If you're worrying about it's not going to happen, you're just adding more energy to that thought that it's not going to happen. The more you worry about it, the stronger it gets.
So it's a lot like we manifest our thoughts, right? So if they're not good thoughts, we manifest something not so good. And if we manifest something positive, we often will have positive experiences.
It's all energy. Whether
Yeah.
it's good energy or bad energy.
Yeah.
I'd like to come back to be approachable. It's extremely important. I mean, you start on with this journey. I mean, it's exciting, but also you worry, and you, as Gary said, and it's all these new emotions that you may never have had. Maybe when you started a new job, you had sort of anxieties, but that's the whole thing. And the more you do it, the more comfortable you become. The more you have to be open to something new.
So that's good, though. We have to all be open to something new, right? And in order to have these great experiences. And like something you said a couple nights ago, Gary, and I found that really poignant. It was your poem about leaving.
Oh, yeah.
You want to share that real quickly?
Well, I love the last stanza of it, and I think it's something like, and how do you get it, this freedom you have? A question people quite often ask. Cast off your fears, disregard, they're only an emotional mask. The secret to travel is really quite simple. You just have to leave.
Yeah.
You're still circling around your house or building your vehicle. You're not traveling yet. Leave.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It may not be perfect. The Land Rover wasn't perfect when I drove towards South Lake Tahoe. But right at the moment, it was the perfect vehicle to drive away from South Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And I'd already made changes by the time I got to the border.
Right. And it will be this also like evolution too. Like you now have the fifth turtle, and you've gone through at least multiple Land Rovers, right? In your travels.
Right? Now the 550.
Yeah.
And every time it's a little bit different.
A little bit different, yeah. But you know, the key thing here is not to be afraid of other people and other places, right? Because you have wonderful experiences. That what enables us to live and have these great experiences.
I start with kids. Kids are always curious. Women in the world, especially in the third world, have a huge connection among each other. It's a network. So if you have a problem, men always help you, but women are the ones that take care of you if you really need it.
Yeah.
And that's a very powerful, because I mean, I don't have this here because we always travel, so I don't have this network of women where I live. But I know, like the Mexicans, they're big family people. They're just gonna take you in, and it doesn't matter if you speak the language or not. They kind of, you know, 2 words they make up the sentence. And we're both happy campers. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is wake up in the morning in a tent. And I always say it's kind of a prenatal experience. You sit in this little cocoon, you know, and it's comfy and cozy, and I love it. So,
Yeah.
And with that, I'm going to end the interview here because we had some interruptions with some of our friends that we camped with that we're all leaving and saying goodbye to. We had such a wonderful time camping out here at Overland Expo, and also I've been very blessed to have spent time with Monika and Gary later on at my house and spending some time with them. But I really hope you enjoyed this interview, learned a bunch from it, and hopefully it inspires you to help get out and travel and help you with your travels. So thank you again for watching. There's a lot more coming up with my camper build, my expedition camper build video series coming up. So thank you again for watching and subscribing. I'll certainly share more in the show notes, and do certainly subscribe and take a look at the Turtle Expedition online.